Hey everyone, Error here. So I thought I'd leave you this message before we start the episode. Just to explain, we've got a very special episode coming up. Jane's done a lot of research on an unsolved mystery, which I didn't know anything about, so she's telling me the story, and we're unsolving the mystery together and discussing our theories, etc. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It went on for longer than we expected because we were enjoying it so much and digging into all the details. So we'll be splitting the episode up into 4 parts, roughly an hour long each. So I think it's better that way. So I thought I'd just introduce this now, and then I'll interrupt and end the episode after around an hour. But there will be 3 other episodes going up, so check them out if you're enjoying it. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy this. I certainly enjoyed listening to it, and I'll see you next time. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of Project Spotlight. And today I'm joined by Jane again, and we have a special episode lined up. Jane is going to be talking to us about a subject she's been researching over the last week or so. Jane, is that how long you've been researching this for?
Yeah, I mean, I started reading into it, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I think, actually. But I started actively researching for this episode, I think, 1 week ago. So it's
So,
spot on.
so it's going to be a little bit different to normal, or very different. So we're going to be talking about mysterious deaths and strange sort of cases that Jane's been looking at. So if there are any younger viewers, you may not want to listen to this because some of it could be quite graphic, but most of it should be okay. But I'll let Jane explain the topic. Why don't you explain overall what it is, Jane, so that we can kind of get started on it?
Okay, well, it is one case, one specific case, and I'm going to give you a quick summary in a minute. But first of all, I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. Or first of all, I want to give credit to somebody, to Theodora Hadzijiska. I'm sorry for butchering this name because she's the woman who created a website about this whole case. It's and maybe if you've heard about this case, you're going to recognize the name. It's dyatlovpass.com. That's her website, and most of my research I spent looking through this website because she put on all the original case files, like pictures of them, and also translated from Russian to English. So I also want to thank everybody who worked with her to translate those files and stuff like that. So yeah, massive credit to her. Then I'm also going to cite a book and quote a book that I've read on this subject. It's by, hang on.
I should also say that I don't know anything about this. This is something Jane has been researching, so I'm much in the same boat as you guys, just listening the first time, figuring out what this is. So
Yeah,
it'll be quite
I've kept
interesting
it
for
a
me.
secret. Yeah. Then also, yeah, credit goes out to Lawton Anderson. Um, for is that a boy's name or a girl's name?
Well, that's not
Girl's
very
name, right?
respectful.
I'm sorry, I'm a foreigner. I don't know any better.
I mean, I don't know the answer, to be honest.
Well, they wrote a book. Look, I'm being respectful here,
That is respectful.
which is called Death of Nine, and they I think the book, I mean, it was great, and for me to start with the whole subject because it was very structured and gave me some idea about the case. It was a bit too much speculation for my taste, so I um, most of the source I gathered from the website, like I said, but still lots of credit to them as well because they've done a great job with that book. And
Okay.
if you want to read further about this case when I'm done here and still curious, just go check out the website, dyatlov.pass.com. Um, there's so much info on there. I couldn't put everything in this episode because I would be sitting here tomorrow still.
I think I'm going to be too scared to look at the website.
Well, I mean, the graphic pictures that might scare some people, which is understandable, are marked, so you can't click on them accidentally.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah. Now, another disclaimer is this is my first time doing something like this, so I might miss some info or get something wrong, and I might start stammering. And so please be patient with me. Then, yeah, some information might be wrong in general because sources are, I mean, they vary a lot, and not just because it's difficult to get the original files, um, but also because of translation issues and um, so yeah,
Well,
And
it's
also
it's a
because,
mystery, so there's bound to be lots of difficult facts to obtain.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there are certain facts, and I hope I get all of them right. And but sometimes there's just different witness testimonies, and they tell different things. And I try to give as many different points of views of this whole thing as possible. But sometimes I just probably didn't know that there's a controversy about a certain topic, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, some things might have gotten lost in translation, of course. And I think I've gotten all of my disclaimers out of the way.
Good. I'm
Right.
excited and nervous.
Good. Well, I'm nervous too because I have to read a lot.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a little summary. And if I sound like I'm reading this from somewhere, it's because I am. I made a whole little script for myself. So in February 1959, a group of 9 very experienced young hikers didn't return from their hike in the Ural Mountains in Russia. A search party was sent out to look for the hikers, but unfortunately all of them could only be recovered dead. Not very mysterious so far, but the circumstances of how the campsite was found and how the hikers lost their lives is what makes it such a puzzling case even 60 years later. The case was closed in June 1959 when the last 4 bodies were found and examined. The conclusion was that the hikers died of freezing and or by accident, even though some of the evidence tells a very different story. For example, 2 hikers were found with missing eyes, and according to the autopsy findings, those injuries were inflicted when the victims were still alive. But yeah, I know. But there is hope that we might find out more details soon, because in February this year, so 60 years after the incident, the case was reopened. And I don't think we'll ever get all of our questions answered, but maybe some of them will be. I mean, lots of interviews get released recently of the past few years, and um, some case files started showing up out of nowhere. And the thing is, so when the official files were released, a good amount of files, pictures, diaries were missing, and nobody really knows what if that information simply got lost or if it was held back intentionally. A lot of people think it was held back. Now, keep in mind that this is Russia in 1959 during the Cold War. But now, so many years later, more and more files suddenly show up, like I said, out of nowhere. And members of the search party, for example, also kept something like a diary and took notes. But those have never been part of the actual investigation. So those things start showing up now. Because, and some people explain this phenomenon by reminding us that those witnesses grew up under Stalin and were taught that that you don't just go around talking about sensitive subjects like that. You know, depending on the information, you and your family would have been sent off to a gulag, which is those working camps,
Yeah.
horrible stuff, and never be seen again. So even though Stalin died in 1953 and things have changed drastically in Russia right now, it surely isn't easy to get rid of this mindset and fear. And so some of those witnesses actually stated in their testament that those files that they've kept a secret should get released after the death, sometimes 10 or 15 years after the death, maybe to make sure that nobody would harm their family either, you know, after those files have been released. So just to explain why things start showing up now and to give
Wow.
you an idea.
Okay. So 9 people have died on a mountain, and they had their eyes
Yes.
pecked out by crows. Case closed, right?
I mean, like I said, the autopsy reports, they show that those injuries in specific, they were inflicted while the victims were alive. And I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where you don't fight off crows eating your eyes
They might be big
if you're
crows.
still alive. Well, you know, radioactive crows maybe, 2 meters tall.
Okay. All right.
So you know what it's about. I hope that was a good summary.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, are we ready for the actual story? Oh, hi.
Yes. I want to go. I want to hear it. Go.
Okay. First off, I want to talk about the hikers themselves. Initially, there were 10 hikers, but one of them left the group relatively early due to medical reasons. I'm going to elaborate on that further a bit later on. But first, I'd like to introduce all of them to you. Not only is it important for the whole case, because you need to know about their hiking skills and understand their group dynamic, which is insanely important during such a difficult hike, but I also want to do them justice, because they weren't just autopsy reports or some bodies found on a mountain. they were real people and very loved by their friends and family. So I want to start off by doing that. Okay. I'm going to send you the first picture.
Okay.
This young man is Igor Dyatlov. Oh, another disclaimer. I'm going to butcher every Russian name.
Yep. Well, I'm glad it's not me reading them out.
Yeah. Well.
So
So this is
Igor.
Igor. Yeah.
So he's a happy little chappy. And these are all university students, are they?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is Igor. So the mountain pass where the deaths occurred, that's named after Igor. Before the incident, it didn't really have a name, and now it's called Dyatlov Pass after Igor Dyatlov.
Okay.
So Igor was a radio engineering student at the UPI. That's the Euro Polytechnic Institute University in Sverdlovsk, Russia. Just in case if you missed it.
Okay.
Everything is Russian. He was 23 years old, a talented engineer, athlete, and inventor of many useful devices that were used for the hikes. One of his inventions was a portable tent heater, a device that the Dyatlov group also brought to their last hike. It's a small metal box, like I think it was described, shaped as like a muffler, that you could hang inside the top of a tent, and you'd fill it with wood, light it up, and a long pipe would vent the fumes outside. So
That's
this
pretty
heater
cool.
is often referred to as stove in the official reports because it just translates that way from Russian to English. But you couldn't actually cook with that device. It was only a heat source, like a heater. And he also invented the double tent, which is just two tents sewn together that could accommodate up to
Genius.
12 hikers. It was genius, to be honest. It looked pretty good.
You could have just imagined, guys. I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to sleep in separate tents. Well, you know, I'm a bit of a genius, guys. Check this out, and just rips them apart and sellotapes them together or something. There you go. I'm a genius.
Although, imagine you'd have to bring two stoves, well, tent heaters if you have two tents. So, he was a genius. He just had to bring one.
Good point. Igor the
right?
genius.
So, and that invention, that double tent, was also brought along. You're going to see pictures of that later.
Excellent.
So, Igor joined the UPI hiking club during his first year of studies. He was considered to be the most experienced athlete of the UPI hiking club. And the UPI, they rated the hikes by difficulty and gave them numbers accordingly. So a category 1 hike was the easiest, 2 was medium difficulty, and 3 was the most difficult. Igor completed multiple category 3 hikes and also functioned as a leader for some of them. And that Dyatlov Pass hike, well, it wasn't called Dyatlov Pass back then, but you know what I mean. Their actual route, that was a category 3 hike.
Okay.
Which I'm going to elaborate now. So through the UPI hiking club, he requested to lead a category 3 winter hike from mid-January through mid-February 1959. The UPI granted permission after reviewing and approving every participating member to make sure they were capable of such a difficult hike. And 9 other hikers joined the group. And the first one to join was Sinaida Kolmogorova. That was very well pronounced. I'm going to send you a second picture now.
Okay.
This is Sina. I'm going to call her Sina to make it easier. Sinaida Kolmogorova. Sina was 22 years old and also studying radio engineering at UPI. Those are all pretty smart people, you know? I mean, radio engineering is probably pretty difficult.
Yeah.
She joined the UPI hiking club when she started school. She had completed multiple difficult hikes, and during one of them, she was bit by a viper. But survived because a family living in the forest applied local herbal remedies to her wound. Sina and Igor might have been dating. The sources vary about this. I mean, I don't think it's that important.
He built a double tent just to be with her, so I'm pretty sure they were.
And it could be important because you also have to keep in mind that if somebody is dating, it might be a motive or something. But just saying, I am not sure. The thing is, though, that they were being very mature about this whole stuff, and they always put the hike above their feelings for each other if they had any. Some things point in that direction that they were dating, but it's not sure. So just put that out there.
Okay.
But Before that, Sina was dating Yuri Doroshenko, which is the third hiker. I'm going to send you a picture of him as well. So this is Yuri Doroshenko.
Okay.
Yuri was 21 years old and a fourth-year radio engineering student at UPI. He was member of the hiking club since his first year at the university and had completed many hikes, including the most difficult Category 3 hikes. Yuri was described as strong, reliable, and the hardest worker of the team. There's an anecdote of Yuri scaring off a bear, where he grabbed a hammer and ran towards it while yelling, and he scared him off.
Okay.
You know, I think that's a Russian cliche. It's like Russians are so tough, they even scare off bears with hammers.
Yeah, it's
I
not
like that
not
story.
recommended. That is definitely
Yeah,
not the
no.
advice. Definitely not the advice
No,
I was given in Canada.
no, don't they tell you need to back off and don't make any loud noises and don't move? And as
Uh,
soon as they turn away, just
no,
run.
you are supposed to make loud noises to try and scare them away and make yourself big. But if they start attacking you, that's when you pretend to be dead. And
Oh,
that's quite difficult because if
if
you
they're poking
attack,
you with their big claws,
they,
like no,
they
don't.
they don't want to eat you. They just want to make sure you're not threatening. So if you just pretend you're dead, they'll leave you alone. Like they might have done some serious damage to you, but that's kind of like a last resort of just lie there because you're not getting away if they're on top of you.
If I see a bear, I'm going to automatically drop down and curl up in a fetal position because I'm so scared. So I'm going to
Well,
do
I
the
got
right
pretty
thing.
close to some wild ones. Uh,
I know. I think you sent me a picture
yeah, I
once.
did. Yeah, some black bears and also a grizzly with cubs as well, which was pretty. That was quite a
Oh,
funny
that's
story.
dangerous,
That
though.
was a
That's
funny
not right.
story though. I'll have to tell you that another time, which I'm sure I've already told you before.
Probably, I think so. Well, but let's move on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to be rude. So yeah, after Sina and Yuri broke up, they remained on good terms though. So there was no hard feelings, I suppose. And Yuri got along well with Igor as well, and they were close friends. So, like I said, no hard feelings apparently. And also, the three of them had completed many hikes together as well. This is Alexander Kolevatov. Alexander was a 24-year-old physics and technology student at UPI. He previously studied in Moscow and joined a hiking club at that university, where he completed several difficult hikes. So in Moscow, he received a degree in metallurgy and worked as a lab assistant in the Ministry of Medium Machine Building, which conducted research into the development of material for the nuclear industry. Keep that in mind. After 3 years, he enrolled in UPI, where he also completed multiple difficult hikes. Alexander was described as cautious, diligent, reasonable, and a well-liked member of the club with leadership skills.
Okay.
It's going to be really difficult for you to remember all those names. So make yourself familiar with the pictures and, just try to, because I'm going to mention the names a lot. And
That's okay. Yeah.
the next one is Ludmila Dubinina. I'm going to call her Luda because that's how she was referenced to by the official reports. They often call her just Luda. That's why I'm keeping that
Okay.
shorter. So Luda was 20 years old and studying engineering and economics at the UPI. She joined the hiking club right after enrolling. She had completed several hikes, including Category 2 hikes. Their last hike was Luda's first Category 3 hike, but nobody doubted that she'd be capable of completing such a hike. In 1957, Luda was accidentally shot in the leg by a hunter, but started hiking again as soon as she was healed. So they're all badasses. Just
I was gonna say.
remember that. One fought off a bear, she got shot, and the other one was bit by a viper.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Luda was described as a merrymaker, hard worker, reliable, brave, and as somebody who wasn't afraid to state their opinion. Luda's family were solid communists, and she was an avid supporter of the government and vocal about her opinion and stances. It's also brave. The next one is Georgy Krivonishenko. He preferred to be called Yuri as well, but there's so many Yuris in this story that I'm just gonna call him
Okay.
his real name. So Georgy Krivonishenko. Georgi was 23 years old and had already graduated from UPI 2 years prior with a degree in civil engineering. And according to the website, it's called Construction and Hydraulics, so nobody knows what he actually studied. I'm sorry. He worked as an engineer in Plant 817, and before that, he worked in a sensitive position at the Mayak nuclear plant in Chelyabinsk. And in 1957, there was a nuclear contamination accident called the Kishtim disaster, and I didn't know that. I'm not sure if you knew that,
No, I've
because
not heard of that.
today it ranks as number 3 of the worst nuclear disasters in the world, right behind Chernobyl and Fukushima. I
Wow.
didn't know that. I've never heard about this.
No.
So and Georgi, he helped up with the cleanup, which is amazing. I don't know. I don't even want to go near that. And
No.
anyway, probably different times back then. Georgi had completed several Category 3 hikes both during and after his time at the UPI. He and Igor, the first one I introduced, were close friends and had done most of their hikes together. Georgi was described as dependable, reliable, a skilled artist and musician, well-liked, and humorous. He was often the comic relief of the group. So yeah, like I mentioned before, friends called him Yuri, but there are so many Yuris that I'm going to call him Georgi.
Okay.
This young man is Rustem Slobodin. Rustem was 23 years old and had a degree in mechanical engineering. He also studied at the UPI. Just like Georgi, Rustem worked in Plant 817 as an engineer. He was athletic, strong, and resilient, and he was active in a variety of sports. He was considered one of the strongest members of the hiking group. He completed several Category 3 hikes. Friends described him as reliable and helpful, and Rustem was also described as a skilled musician. He played the mandolin and often played some songs around the campfire in the evening. I gotta say that he's very handsome in this picture. Handsome
Okay.
young man. What?
No, I just.
He's a handsome young man. And also, I thought the same thing, just to be clear. I think that's also a very pretty picture of Zinaida Kolmogorova that I sent you.
Uh,
I'm up
y-
there, all handsome fellas.
yes. What about Georgi?
Yeah, I like his ears. They're kind of cute.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, those are old pictures. I picked the nicest ones that I could find, to
Did
be
you get
honest.
them from their Instagram?
Oh, come on.
Okay.
There we have another Yuri. That's Yuri Yudin. Yuri was 22 years old and studied engineering and economics at the UPI. He completed several hikes, including Category 3s. He was the only one who survived because he had a nerve condition, and I don't know how to pronounce it. It's called sciatica, and
Okay.
that flared up right before the hike. So the thing is, and that led to Yuri's decision to withdraw from the hike and turn around. So that's sciatica. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. That causes numbness, weakness, and severe pain originating in the lower back and traveling down the sciatic nerve in the back of each leg.
So did he actually start the hike?
He traveled with the others to
The base
I'm going
camp?
to elaborate on that. He traveled to like a camp, and but just by train and by trucks and stuff like that. So he joined them there. But as soon as they actually started hiking with their skis, I think it's called cross country skiing, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's where he turned around and left and said he can't do it.
Okay.
So the plan was that Yuri would stay in a nearby town until the rest of the hikers returned, but as we all know, that never happened. Yuri played a big part in the investigations because he knew the group very well and could provide insight in their personalities and the group dynamic. He also helped identifying items of the group and could answer questions that couldn't have been solved without him. Yuri Yudin passed away in 2013. His last wish was to be buried near the other hikers in St. Michael Cemetery. He never fully recovered from losing his friends and felt like he might have been able to save them if he would have continued the hike. I'm going to send you a picture of the older Yuri Yudin. Unfortunately, he's the only one where such a picture is
Yeah. Okay.
available. I feel bad for him because he apparently, according to this website, he always said, "I wish I would have been the 10th."
It,
And he was apparently pretty, yeah, he couldn't recover from this trauma that he lost all of his friends.
it would be awful. I mean, at the same time, he's very lucky, but it's the sort of
Yeah, what
thing
is
where
that's the question?
you would feel relief and also a lot of sorrow as well at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if you can, if you hear that message, I don't know if you will ever consider yourself lucky or as if you don't deserve it. I think many people feel that they didn't deserve to survive, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
or
what is it called? Survivor's guilt?
yeah, something like that.
I think that has a name.
Like I get it, like not getting on the train because for some tiny reason, and then the train crashing, everyone dying on the train,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah,
something like that, yeah.
just
Or
missing a
even being in the
bus.
train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now I gotta speak French as well because this man is called Nikolai Thibault Prignol.
Okay.
That was awful. Um, so Nikolai was 23 years old. He studied at the UPI and graduated with a degree in civil engineering in 1958. He was working as an engineering foreman in construction. His mother was Russian and his father was French. That's why he has the French name. Nikolai was born in an internment prison camp. The family was sent to the camp after Nikolai's father was accused of being active in the Revolutionary Party and convicted of crimes against the state. His father was sentenced to 10 years of hard labor working in the mines and passed away when Nikolai was 9 years old. Despite all that, Nikolai was described as cheerful, self confident, humorous, helpful, and reliable. He had completed several complex hikes, including category threes. So just I mean, those were the times back then, you know? Maybe his father hasn't done anything wrong, you know, and then you're accused of crimes against the state and sent away for
I
10
know.
years.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not even that long ago, but just how scary things could be at certain times. Like just normal people could have these. I mean, even the people who've been bitten by a viper and stuff like that is just a very different time.
Yeah. I mean, those happen occasionally still, you know, those bites.
They do. Yes, obviously to a lot of people actually. Yeah.
But it's also interesting how long Russia takes to recover from this time. I mean, they've gone a long way, but still, you can sometimes I think in some places you can still feel that, especially with the older generations. Like I mentioned in the beginning, you know, they were afraid of publishing those files, and I totally understand that. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes.
Yeah.
Now, and this is the last one. His name is Semyon Solotarev, or Semyon. It's like the Russians Simon.
Okay.
So Semyon was the oldest of the group. He was 37 years old. He was a soldier in World War II and earned 4 combat awards. After the war, Semyon joined the Moscow School of Military Engineers, but had to quit due to a forced reduction of students. And the same thing happened when he joined the Leningrad Military Engineering School afterwards. He ended up studying at the Minsk Institute of Physical Education and graduated in 1951. In the 50s, he worked as an athletic and hiking instructor and was top candidate for an instructor position at UPI. His chances would have increased by completing a Category 3 hike, so the UPI contacted Igor and requested that Semyon joins the group. Igor didn't have much of a choice and accepted. The others of the group weren't too thrilled to hear about the stranger joining their group at first. You know, all of them had completed several hikes together throughout the years and knew each other very well. And during such difficult and potentially dangerous hikes, you need to know that you can trust and depend on each other. And that's why the group was alarmed at first. Simeon was understanding and knew that he needed to be trusted and accepted, so the whole group has met multiple times before starting the hike. And Simeon eventually made friends with the group, especially with Nikolai, and he became a close friend of him. So even though Simeon had military experience and was the oldest, he never insisted on being the leader of the group and left that part to Igor. At the beginning of the hike, it became apparent that he'd be an asset during this difficult hike. And I can imagine that, you know, somebody who has such experience, like being at the front and stuff like that, also surviving in the winter. Um,
Yeah. Also a
that
little bit
must have been
older.
very valuable. yeah, also a bit older, maybe a bit more mature and calmer, maybe, a bit, what's the term? Um, Level-headed.
Level-headed, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Proud of
Although the
myself.
rest of them seem quite smart,
Oh
mature
yeah, of
individuals,
course. I
didn't
don't
they? Yeah.
wanna. Yeah, I think I'm like projecting because many, like, if you look at 20-year olds, 21-year-olds now, not all of them are always that mature. It was a bit different back then. Back then when you were 20 or 21, 22, those people were very much grown-ups by then and had a family often and just marrying and having kids and
Yeah.
um, but now time shifts and I don't blame anyone for that. Just saying that um, we remain we I don't know, we we stay kids a little longer, which is also good, I think. Just be a kid as long as you can.
Yeah.
Okay, now those are the hikers. I hope that you can somehow, you get a picture of them and then also uh, get an idea of who they were. And now we're going to start with the hike itself. So the UPI, they approved Ego's hike route through the Ural Mountains, which would cover 217 miles, which is 25.7 kilometers, in 16 days in a circular route. On their hike, they'd also pass Mount Otorten, Otorten
Okay.
and Mount Gora Oika Jaku. I know.
Don't ask me to help you
I'm
out here.
sorry. Help me.
I don't know.
So the route would have ended back in a village called Visai, where Igor would have sent a telegram to UPI. I'm struggling. I'm sweating. So in that town, in that village, he would have sent a telegram to UPI reporting that they've made it safely, which also ultimately never happened, as we know. Now I've got a picture for you of
Okay.
the route, what it would have looked like. Okay, so here we have a map, and on the bottom right, where the little house is, you can read Visai. Now you can try and pronounce that.
It's pronounced
That's where they.
Vijay.
I bet.
I have no idea. That's the first time I've ever seen that.
So that's where they. I know. Yeah, me too. I don't usually read stuff in Russian. So that's where they started off, and then they went north. Where north in this map, like to the top,
Yeah.
and to the settlement 41. You can see that in the picture, and they ended up being there on January 26th. Then up to the camp on January 29th, and then where it's right in the north, where the little tree is in the picture. I hope you can see that.
Yep.
That's where the camp and their storage site and all that kind of stuff was found, and also the hikers. And the the purple line on the left is where they would have returned and
Okay.
went back.
So they made it almost halfway around where they were trying to go.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much.
Okay.
I mean, I think it would have taken longer to return because I think they were right before the first mountain. So that would have taken a bit longer, of course, to get
Yeah,
up
I
there.
suppose you said 16 days, didn't you? And there are only kind of 6 days in there at the camp, January
Yeah.
31st. Okay, so not quite halfway.
Okay, so now the UPI provided most of the equipment for the hike. They provided skis, ski poles, tools, coats, the tent and the stove, and much more. So Ego also requested a two-way radio, but that was disapproved by the UPI. And the reasoning was that such a luxury item wouldn't fit the challenges of a hike like that, carrying only the bare necessities. So I don't know how I should understand that. If they said that that's, don't be such sissies, you don't need a radio, or was it like, just, that's too heavy, don't bring that with you because you're going to only be able to carry the necessities. I don't know
Yeah,
how that
well,
was meant.
a two-way radio would be very different. What we expect a two-way radio is, but could it also be to do with the fact that doing this type of hike was a qualification? So, so they, if you've got too many luxuries, they wouldn't want to count it as a good qualification. So you're saying it's a level 3 hike? Didn't you say one of the other guys had to do it to get a better chance of being qualified for something. Is that right?
Yeah, that was Simeon,
Yeah.
and qualified as a leader, as an instructor, I
Yes.
think.
So maybe
But
maybe it's one of those things like, this is a level 3 hike. We don't want you. You need to be out in the wild without too many luxuries. Maybe it was part of that. It was either that,
could be.
or they could say to him, no, it's far too heavy for you to carry. One of those two.
Yeah, maybe. Like I don't know how heavy or big such a two-way radio was back then, but I mean it would have certainly been a game changer, definitely, if they had a two-way radio. I
Yeah.
mean, but yeah, that's a perfect example of why some things just aren't clear because it's like translated like that, and you don't know actually what's being meant, and that part isn't might not be that important, but still, it's sometimes difficult to tell what is being said there.
Okay.
Now, the thing is that according to some sources, no extra skis or ski poles were provided, and that is a very important detail for later on. Some other sources, and I believe there's even a picture where it's shown where it's disproven, where it's proven that they had an extra pair of skis, apparently. And the thing is that uh, so if a pair would have gotten lost or broken, the whole hike would have been in danger because walking without skis would have almost been impossible on that kind of
Yeah.
hike.
I'd be surprised that they
Given
wouldn't take spares.
I know, me too, because given that the snow was often up to 3 meters deep, 10 feet, and you can't just walk through that. I mean, it would take significantly longer and be more dangerous. So there is a picture. I don't know if I have it, where one of the group is seen carrying a pair of skis on their back, and so that could be a hint that they had extra skis and an extra pair. And also, I think there is a list, an inventory list, somewhere on the website. I believe. I think I've seen it where from the UPI where you can see they had an extra pair, but I'm not sure. Like I said,
Well, they would have had access
just
to an extra
mentioning.
pair because of the guy that didn't go with them. So
That's the thing, though.
they could have potentially
I,
taken his.
yeah, I don't know if that was mentioned anywhere, but I think he took his own skis back. It is mentioned what he gave the group from
Okay.
his items, and this pair of skis was not mentioned, so I don't think
Well, because
that's it.
he
But
could have needed the skis to get back himself, so that would be one thing. If he hadn't gone that far, but still needed them to go back, maybe.
no, he didn't need them because, like I
Okay.
said, they didn't even start the actual hike then, so he could have just went back by um as like a horse sleigh, something like that, and then by truck again and whatever. So public,
Okay.
no, the public transport of that time. Um, so yeah, and every member of the group, they were carrying a backpack with their own personal items, and the group items would be divided up among the hikers, so such as the tent poles, compasses, rope, axe, etc. That was split up. Okay, I think that was a proper introduction of everything. I hope you. Is there anything unclear?
No, it's clear to me what the objective was, who they were, and where they were going. So
Okay, nice.
now I just want to get to the part with the killer crows.
We'll get there eventually. All right, because now we're going to start with a little timeline, and I'm going to tell you the date and where they were headed and what they were doing. I left a couple of details out on purpose because, it is often difficult to tell which I don't know which situation was kind of important to the case, but sometimes they were just, I don't know. Um, in a school and talking to kids, for example, about hiking and stuff like that. I left it out because I don't think it has it changed anything for them. But yeah, I couldn't mention every step they made.
Yep.
That would have been impossible. Right. So January 23rd, 1959. This is when the trip started for both the Dyatlov group and also a second UPI hiking group led by Yuri Blinov. Both groups took a train from Sverdlovsk to Serov. Keep that in mind. Remember the name Blinov, the Blinov group. I'm going to talk about them quite a bit later on,
Did they
or a couple of
were
times.
they on the same train or they just took a train?
They took the same train. They traveled together
Okay, so
at that
they were
time.
together at the time. Okay.
January 24th, there was a little incident in Serov worth mentioning for later on for a theory. The groups were told that they couldn't stay at the train station to wait for the next train, which would have taken the whole day, I think, or the night maybe. But there wasn't much else to do because the stores were closed and stuff like that. So Georgi started fooling around, started singing and jokingly begging strangers for candy, or according to the website, for money. Don't know if that makes a big difference. So it was basically just, I told you, Georgi was the comic relief, and he started fooling around, just lighten the mood because they didn't have anything to do. And so, yeah, it was pretty typical for him, I believe. Now, it wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. But a police officer witnessed the whole thing and informed both groups that such a quote disruption of peace, end quote, was undesired in a quote good communist town, end quote, like Serov, and arrested Georgi.
He got arrested.
Now he got arrested.
Okay.
That's the thing. It was awful times back then. He was just fooling around and joking and singing, and waving his head around, asking the strangers to put candy inside or a bit money. He wasn't being serious, I believe. And he just got arrested. Imagine that. Yeah. Now, an arrest could have lasted days back then, but fortunately, Georgi was released just after a few hours, and in the evening, they took a train to Ivdel. Now, like I said, keep that incident in mind. That is a big part of one of the theories I'm going to talk about later.
Okay.
What might have happened. Okay, so January 25th, the groups spent the night at the train station in Ivdel after they arrived, and then took a bus to the unpronounceable town, Vizhai, where they spent the night in a hotel. In Vizhai,
Vijay.
The two groups separated. So in Vizhai, they separated. The Blinov group also had 10 members and also planned on hiking through the Ural Mountains, but their hike was planned to last 25 days. Also, make notes, 25 days.
Okay.
Both hikes would run parallel to each other, but be separated by several miles. So we've seen the regional route of the Dyatlov group, and I think you can imagine it like that. I think the Blinov group started in a separate place in Vizhai already. So the bottom of the map, maybe you can show it again, bottom right, and maybe they just made a bigger circle and also returned to Vizhai. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so they were planning, so it was roughly going to be the same, but they did have a different route and it should be a route where they wouldn't have ever crossed. It's kind of like, you said, a couple of miles apart, which is quite far.
Yeah, I mean, if you imagine the route of the is it route or route? I never know.
Route, I would say. You people? What do you mean by you people?
I mean, do Americans pronounce it differently?
Yeah, I think Americans will sometimes say route, but it's pronounced route.
You make it so hard for me.
That's
okay.
You can say either. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I'm just gonna read it in German from now on. So, imagine the route of the Dyatlov group being a circle. I believe that the Blinov group went the same route, but in a bigger circle outside. You know what I mean? The outside circle.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have crossed, I believe. I don't know if because the routes would have crossed. I don't know if it was that strict, but it would have been parallel to each other. But their trip would have taken longer. So I assume they went further and therefore like a bigger circle, kind of, because it was a circular route.
Yeah.
I mean, not an actual circle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay. So, like I said, on January 25th, the Blinov group started hiking and going their own way from Vizhai, and the two groups separated. On January 26th, the Dyatlov group traveled on the back of an open truck from Vizhai to a logging settlement called the 41st Quarter. And the logging men were welcoming and described as good company, also in their diaries that were found later. The stay in the 41st Quarter was described as a happy and comfortable one. Rustem played the mandolin, and the Dyatlov group sang songs. Many of them watched movies, and they all stayed up quite late, still talking to each other, having conversations. So it was a happy stay over there.
Okay.
January 27th, the hikers packed their stuff and traveled to an old uninhabited mining camp called the Second North. And I think that's funny because it sounds like it's straight out of Game of Thrones.
He does, doesn't he?
Um, yeah. Their
Was it the White Walkers?
backpacks.
Is that the twist?
That's the twist, yeah. It was the White Walkers all along. So, yeah, they packed their stuff, traveled to the Second North. That was an abandoned mining camp. The backpacks were transported in a horse-drawn sleigh by one of the loggers because he offered to transport the backpacks for them and
Okay.
bring them up there. Before they left at almost 4 p.m., Yuri has already decided that he wouldn't be able to continue the hike due to his nerve condition. But he wanted to join the group to the Second North anyway because he wanted to collect rock and mineral specimens for further study at the UPI.
Okay.
He wanted to collect rocks at the mining camp to study them. That's why he joined the group to the Second North.
So he has already come quite far, but so far they haven't done any sort of snow traversal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
maybe he noticed that the walking didn't work for him and that it flared up and
Yeah.
was painful. And maybe he noticed that there's no way he can complete such a hike.
Okay.
The group made it to the mining camp at about 11 p.m. Most of the houses there were in a state of disrepair, but one of the logging men told the group that about one house that would be in good enough condition to provide shelter for the night. Even though it was already dark, the group found the house and spent the night there. Again, they stayed up late, were joking and talking until 3 a.m. until they went to bed. They're pretty much like us, right?
Yeah.
Going to bed at 3 a.m., talking, not wanting to go to bed,
Doing
playing the mandolin.
2 week long hikes. Yeah, just like us.
Yeah, just like us. So, January 28th, after breakfast, Yuri Yudin, Yuri Doroshenko, and Alexander Kolevatov went to collect mineral samples. The other hikers packed in the meantime. While Yuri Yudin prepared to leave as well, he talked to Igor and noticed that Igor previously had a, quote, spirited conversation with one of the loggers. Igor stated that the conversation was not important, but that the group would probably need a few extra days to complete the hike. Yuri didn't press Igor for more details about the conversation, and when Yuri got home, he told the UPI that the group won't return until February 14th, instead of the planned February 12th.
Okay.
That conversation, you might also want to keep in mind that Igor talked to one of the loggers for later on, anyway. Because, yeah, it was never mentioned, not even in the diaries, what they talked about. And don't know, the logger could have just told him, like, you know what, I have lots of experience up there, and looks like a snowstorm might come and you might take longer. I don't know, whatever he told them. So before Yuri left, he gave some of his items to the group, like I said earlier, like some of his socks, his mittens, and he gave his sleeveless vest to Alexander. I was pretty calm about that.
Some of his dirty old socks.
Why do they have to be dirty? Maybe they were clean.
Okay. And so
Also, I think if you...
he took his vest and his socks off and gave them to some dude to wear.
I don't think he took him off. I think he might have been in his backpack as
No,
extra gear.
I'm joking. Okay.
And it was pretty common back then. I mean, also, even if they were dirty, I think if you were in that kind of climate,
You
you'd
put
take
them
the
on.
dirtiest socks.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it was also common to swap clothes. Like if one person in the group was cold, you just give them a sweater that you had spare, you know?
Yeah.
So they were all wearing each other's clothes. And apparently it was pretty common. They then said goodbye, and Yuri left with the sleigh driver at around 10 a.m.
Okay.
This was the last time the Dyatlov group was seen alive. So from this point on, we don't know exactly what happened to them. We just have their diaries.
And this is still the 27th of January, is it?
This is still the 20th.
Yeah.
That was the 28th of January.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, from now on, we only have the diaries and photos from the group. And from this point forward, the hikers would be hiking on skis and with all of their belongings on their back and sleeping in their tents. So this is when the actual hike started. They had a group diary that was found in the tent along with the diaries of Sina, Luda, and Rustem. A fifth diary was also found, but that one was not signed, so nobody knows who that belonged to. In the group diary, they kept record of their travels, and in the in the evening after the course, and after dinner, someone would write the details from the day, like I don't know, weather was like this, and I'll have an example for you. So the remaining hikers left the second north at 11:45 a.m., stopped for a lunch break at 4 p.m., and stopped for the evening at 5:30 p.m. That's what we gathered from the diaries already. They set up the tent and started a campfire for dinner. Everyone was in good spirits and looking forward to the next day. Alexander was on duty for the night to keep watch over things, especially the stove, the tent heater thing. And because they had a rule that one or two of them had to stay awake at night and keep an eye on the stove. They were quite aware of the danger of having a heat source in their tent, so
Yeah.
one or two of them had to stay awake and keep an eye on that thing.
Okay.
So there's an end. I'm not talking about all the entries, the diary entries, just some of them, and because most of them are kind of summarized. And but this one is from Sina's diary on January 28th, so the first day of their actual hike. She writes that last night, the boys made stupid jokes, end quote, and that they might be, quote, less rude, end quote, if they wouldn't pay that much attention to them. And this one is tricky. The diaries are tricky because they are very roughly translated. It sometimes looks like it was translated by Google Translate.
Yeah.
Or I think some things just can't be translated easily, and some words are kind of odd or maybe sound suspicious, but I think it's just a translation, so keep that in mind. That's why I didn't quote it, just a couple of parts.
Yeah, okay.
So she noted when the group stopped for lunch and mentioned that it was way easier to travel without backpacks the day before, and wrote, quote, the first day is always difficult, end quote. She also writes, quote, Alexander tested his device, then quit, end quote. And that's also important, keep that in mind. I'm not sure what this device was, because that's the only time it was ever mentioned, and no unknown device was found by the search party. And there weren't any devices in the inventory that the UPI gave to them. So it must have been something that belonged to him, a personal item. And I mean, it probably wasn't a two-way radio, otherwise they could have communicated with somebody. So I don't know what it was. Nobody knows. And there's a lot of speculation around that thing.
This is something Alexander had.
Alexander, yeah.
And he, okay, just a random device.
Just some device that he tested and then quit.
Okay.
Could have been anything, I don't know.
His Game Boy.
Probably.
Okay.
But if it was his Game Boy, he wouldn't have just quit after testing it.
He would have gone home, just kept playing Tetris.
Yeah. So in the end, Sina writes, quote, Igor was rude the whole evening. I just couldn't recognize him, end quote. And that would somehow contradict the other source where it said that the mood was good and the group was good-spirited. But I think rude can mean something different here. Like I said before, it can be tricky to translate Russian to English. And at the beginning of the diary, she also used the word rude when she described the guys who were making stupid jokes. So maybe Igor wasn't straight up rude, but just making stupid and teasing jokes and was annoying, you know?
What was the
So
second
that's just
part?
my speculation.
What was the second part of that sentence she said? The last entry?
She said Igor was rude. Igor was rude the whole evening. I just couldn't recognize him.
Yeah, so I just couldn't recognize him makes me feel like she did mean that he was being horrible or rude.
Either that or, you know, I don't know. I can just, like I said, that's a lot of speculation. I think of, you know, that it's a little anecdote of my life. You know, I once introduced a friend of mine to to my friend group, so they didn't know each other before that. And my friend acted kind of differently, as if she wanted to impress the others.
Right.
And she was making kind of offensive jokes towards me and being a bit, you know, a bit rude, but it was more teasing, so it wasn't actually rude. And I couldn't recognize her in that moment. She was being really different, but not
right.
anyway suspicious. So, It could be. You could be right. Maybe he was upright rude and being real mean to her, or I don't know, and that's why
Because
she couldn't recognize.
yeah, well, that's what that says to me is yeah, he was making so many horrible jokes. I just don't recognize. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't like being the same person. Um,
Yeah,
it makes
maybe
me
he
think she
just.
was taking offense to it, but again, it's just
Yeah,
an
me too.
interpretation.
Me, yeah, me too. I also think that she was taking offense by just reading the sentence. I'm just always thinking of what could it mean as well, if maybe there's a second point of view, So it could be that, it could be the other thing as well. It's difficult to say. And one other thing that we have to keep in mind is that Igor and Sina might have been dating. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe he was just ignoring her and was maybe so focused on being the leader of the hike and such great responsibility, and maybe didn't pay much attention to her, and she maybe it might have interpreted it as rude. Maybe, I don't know, how when you have a crush on somebody you might be a bit oversensitive, like, I
especially
didn't
out
pay
there
attention to
hiking
me
all
all
day
day.
in the snow.
I don't know. I'm just saying it could have been everything, and just wanted to
Yeah,
take that into consideration. And maybe he was just so busy doing other stuff that he didn't pay attention to her, and she was like, "I don't even recognize him. He didn't talk to me all day."
yeah,
Just it could be.
yeah. It could be.
Right. So the group diary, January 28th, so the same day still. Uh, Luda wrote this entry, and she mentioned saying goodbye to Yuri Yudin, the guy who left, and Sina also mentioned that. So they both were a bit devastated that he left and disappointed because apparently they were good friends. So she mentioned saying goodbye to him and that it's a pity that he can't continue. Apparently, the group went to the Lodzva River and also set up their camp near the river. She mentions that the guys were busy sewing curtains out of sheets. After dinner, they sat around the campfire and sang some songs. Sina apparently tried to learn how to play the mandolin. I think Rustem taught her to. Luda also mentions that nobody wants to sleep next by the stove, and that they've agreed that Georgi would spend the night there, but Georgi apparently couldn't stand the heat and got up after 1 or 2 minutes cursing and moving to a different section of the tent. I think the diaries are nice because they give a little, insight on how their lives looked like during the hike, and
Yeah,
just normal young people. One got up like, ah, damn this
yeah,
stove, it's way too hot. Won't sleep next to this thing and stuff like that. I think it's nice too. Um, and it helps to like kind of draw a picture in your head of what might have happened.
definitely.
Okay, so January 29th, the next day, the men of the group took turns leading and breaking the trail to make it easier for the others to follow. So that was it's called the non-stop method, I think. So one works forward without the backpack to break the trail, and then comes back to the group, and then they go forward, and then another one breaks the trail. I think it's like the non-stop method. I believe it's what it's called.
Okay.
Don't know exactly. I'm not a hiker. Um, they stopped for lunch midway and then followed a Mansi ski trail where they also saw a Mansi storage platform and Mansi signs carved into trees. The Mansi are, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, Mansi, I don't know. The Mansi are nomadic natives who live in the Ural Mountains. They are described often, or mostly described, as peaceful, and they often helped hikers out by providing shelter for them. The Mansi supposedly never hurt any hikers, hunters, or others who traveled through their land. There are theories out there suggesting that the Mansi killed the Dyatlov group because the hikers traveled through their holy sites, but the area where they were found is of no spiritual importance to the Mansi. They were also investigated but soon cleared and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
um, also the mountain where they were found is called Kalatsiako. I know, which is a name by the Mansi and means dead mountain. But there is a lot of misinformation out there about this name, and it falsely got translated to Death Mountain or Mountain of Death, which led to many people believing that the name was either an ominous sign or that the Mansi would kill people on that mountain. But it really just means that there is nothing up there to hunt, um, and
So
basically named it Death Mountain
like
to
barren,
remind
yeah, barren rather than
them.
dead.
Yeah, to remind themselves that to not go hunting up there because it's pretty much a waste of time. There's just no animals, and that's why it's called Dead Mountain. So yeah, a lot of misinformation. That's what annoyed me a bit because I've heard about this case a long time ago, but it's always made out to be like a supernatural thing. And I mean, which is fine if you have theories like that, but some things are just being left out. Like the Mansi, they more than one times they made it clear why the mountain is named Dead Mountain. And but some people just leave this information out, and to make it more mysterious, they say Mountain of Death, so it
Yeah.
sounds more ominous and creepy. And so yeah,
And
I hope I can clarify a bit.
can I ask a question I didn't ask? I should have asked at the
No.
start. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask.
Do people walk? Is this a trail that people have walked regularly or like often? Like you said, the Mansi often help people out, and there's logging camps and stuff. But it, do people go this way quite often?
What, people, hikers?
Yeah, yeah. Like it's so the Death Mountain theory. Well, if there's like 30 other groups that have done it before and didn't die, and this one group did, then why would it have anything to do with the mountain? It's kind of where I was going with that.
Mm.
Like
I mean,
they're not like hiking out into the wilderness where no one's ever gone before.
yeah, and I'm not sure if I didn't find any information on that, but I
Okay.
assume that if the hike was planned so thoroughly that they knew somehow where to go. I believe that this has been I don't know, hiked several times by others, but that's just an assumption. I don't know for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, you said it was category 3, so it was obviously a very difficult hike. But um, I was just wondering whether it was a route that was known to everybody. And but anyway, yeah, it sounds like it's
But
not. Maybe it's a very difficult hike, but might have been used before.
yeah, the thing is though that is what is certain is that the Mansi often provided shelter, like I said, for hikers. So they crossed paths several times, and they live in the Ural Mountains. So it's probably impossible, no matter what kind of hike you're doing, to somehow cross their paths,
Yeah,
or yeah, I don't know, get near them. And like I said, they're nomadic as well. It's just maybe they travel around. And um, so I think when it's said and stated that there are no reported incidents of Mansi ever hurting hikers or anybody, then I assume that, I mean, why would they do something or hurt them that day? Because it's not like it was something special. Not even the mountain where they died was anything spiritual to them or sacred.
exactly. Yeah.
So I think, I mean, one other source says there was one time where somebody was killed by the Mansi, and there are horrible rumors about them stealing Russian babies and stuff like that. So, but like I said, they were investigated, officially investigated, and but they were soon cleared. So I assume they had nothing to do with it. And but yeah, I mean, who knows? There's another story, I believe, about the Mansi. What was it? Like I said, so much information. It's very difficult. Um, some source said it was indeed a sacred site, uh, or holy site. I don't know. And especially forbidden for women to go up there. So and people say that might have been the reason, but like I said, police officially investigated that theory and looked into it and asked Mansi people, and they said no, it's not sacred.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, it's called Dead Mountain. We don't go up there. Like that's where they got the information from, I believe.
Okay, everyone, Arrow here again. I'm going to stop the episode here. I think this is a good time to stop for episode 1. We will continue on the journey in episode 2, so I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and we'll see you in the next episode.